The road was nearly swallowed by winter dust and silence when the lone cowboy saw the small figure standing at the edge of it, boots planted bravely in the cold dirt, as if she were guarding the empty stretch of land herself. He slowed his horse, uneasy, expecting trouble or fear, but instead found a little girl, no older than 7, her coat too thin for December and her eyes too full of hope. The ranch behind her looked forgotten by time, fences sagging, paint peeled away by years of wind, the house crouched low against the coming night. The cowboy tipped his hat and asked if she was lost, but she shook her head quickly, clutching a small wooden toy to her chest. Then she asked the question that caught him completely off guard, her voice soft but serious, as though she had been worrying about it all day. "Is Santa lost because he can't find our ranch?" The words struck him harder than any storm. He followed her gaze toward the long, winding road disappearing into the hills, realizing how easy it would be for anyone or anything to miss this place. He noticed the empty barn, the thin smoke curling from the chimney, the quiet that spoke of hardship rather than peace. The girl explained that Santa always came to other places, but this year felt different, like maybe the world had forgotten where they were. The cowboy dismounted, boots crunching softly, and for the first time in years he felt something twist in his chest. Memories surfaced of his own childhood winters, of waiting and waiting for something good that never came, of learning too early that believing hurt. He wanted to brush off her question with a smile and keep riding, but the innocence in her face wouldn't allow it. Instead, he knelt so they were eye level and told her Santa sometimes needed help finding places far from the main roads, places that didn't show up on any map. As he spoke, he realized he wasn't just comforting her, he was convincing himself that forgotten places still mattered. The girl's smile returned, small but bright, and she thanked him before running back toward the house, leaving the cowboy standing alone in the road as dusk settled around him. He mounted his horse again, yet his hands trembled on the reins, because for the first time in a long while, the road ahead felt heavier than the one behind, and a simple question from a child had opened a door he thought was closed forever. The cowboy watched the little girl disappear toward the house, but something urged him to follow at a distance, as if the road itself had bent him toward the ranch. As he approached, the full truth of the place revealed itself in painful detail. The barn door hung crooked on one hinge, the fence leaned like it had long given up standing straight, and the land looked tired as though it had been worked beyond mercy. He was met by the girl's mother on the porch, her smile polite but strained eyes, shadowed by exhaustion she tried hard to hide. Inside, the warmth was thin, the fire low, and the furnishings sparse, yet carefully kept. The girl proudly announced she had spoken to someone who might help Santa find them, and the parents exchanged a quiet look that said they didn't. T wanted to break her heart, but didn't T know how to protect it either? Over a cup of weak coffee, the cowboy learned the truth. The father had been injured months ago when a horse threw him, leaving him unable to work the land as he once had. Debts piled up, neighbors moved away, and winter arrived faster than hope. Christmas wasn't spoken of aloud anymore, not because they didn't care, but because wanting too much only made the days harder. The cowboy listened more than he spoke, noticing how the girl hummed softly to herself, stringing popcorn for a tree that didn't yet exist, believing with every fiber of her small being that magic still knew their address. The weight of the ranch pressed on him, not just as a place of struggle, but as a mirror to his own life years, spent drifting, surviving, never staying long enough to be needed. When he finally stood to leave, the mother thanked him for stopping, her voice breaking just enough to reveal how rare kindness had become. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose boards, and the cowboy paused, staring at the darkening sky. He told himself their troubles weren't his burden, that people like him passed through and moved on. Yet as he swung back into the saddle, he realized this ranch wasn't forgotten because it was unworthy. It was forgotten because no one had chosen to see it. And for the first time in years, the cowboy felt the uncomfortable pull of responsibility, knowing that, once you truly see a place like this, riding away becomes far harder than staying. The cowboy rode only a short distance before night fully settled, then made camp beneath a stand of cottonwoods where the wind cut less sharply. Though it did nothing to quiet his thoughts, the fire crackled low, throwing restless shadows that seemed to drag old memories out of the dark. Memories he had spent years outrunning. He hadn't planned to stay near the ranch yet. The girl's voice kept returning to him, gentle and trusting, asking if Santa was lost, as if the world was still kind enough to misplace goodness rather than erase it altogether. He stared into the flames and remembered a winter long ago when he had waited by a window, just as she was doing now, believing that someone would come, that promises meant something. No one ever did. That was the winter he learned to rely on the road instead of people, to keep moving before hope could take root and break. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint outline of the ranch house in the distance, a single dim light, glowing stubbornly against the dark, and the sight unsettled him more than the cold. He told himself that families like theirs survived because they had to. That, stepping in, only delayed the inevitable. Yet his hands tightened, as if the lie were physical. The fire burned down to embers, and with it his resolve thinned, replaced by an ache he had no name for, something between regret and longing. He thought of the girl stringing popcorn for a tree that might never be filled, of parents pretending not to hope, because hope was too dangerous, and of how easily he could ride away at dawn and forget their faces like so many others before them. Instead, he lay awake, listening to the night, wrestling with the truth that loneliness had been his shield, not his freedom. As the stars faded and the sky lightened, the cowboy finally sat up, breath clouding in the cold air, knowing that by morning he would have to choose between the familiar comfort of the road and the frightening possibility of staying long enough to matter. Dawn came pale and quiet, washing the land in a thin silver light that made every hard truth impossible to ignore, and the cowboy knew before he saddled his horse that the road would not claim him that morning. Instead of riding away, he turned toward town, the decision settling in his chest with equal parts fear and resolve. The ride felt different now, every mile measured not by distance but by purpose, and when he reached the small trading post he sold a possession he had carried for years, a finely tooled saddle worn smooth by countless miles and memories he no longer needed to keep. With the few bills in his pocket, he moved quickly, buying flour, sugar, canned goods, warm blankets, and a handful of modest gifts that would fit easily into a child's hands. He added a string of simple lights and a scrap of red cloth, unsure exactly why, only knowing they felt necessary. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow but said nothing, perhaps recognizing a man making a rare kind of choice. By the time the cowboy rode back toward the ranch, the sun was already sinking again, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks that felt almost like approval. He told himself, this was not charity, and not a promise. A small correction, in a world that too often missed its turns. As the ranch came into view, quiet and fragile against the growing dusk, the cowboy slowed, heart pounding harder than any gunfight he had ever faced, aware that once he crossed this line he would no longer be just a passerby. Night wrapped the ranch in stillness as the cowboy guided his horse to the far side of the property, careful to keep to the shadows where the moonlight barely touched the ground. He tied the reins to a post and moved quietly, boots softened by years of learning how not to be heard. Yet this time he wasn't avoiding danger, he was protecting a fragile belief. From a small sack at his side, he took out the red cloth and wrapped it around his shoulders, feeling faintly foolish and unexpectedly moved all at once. Inside the house, the fire had burned low, and the family slept, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding just beyond their walls. The cowboy worked slowly, fixing what he could with steady hands, tightening loose boards on the fence, bracing the barn door so it would hold against the wind, small repairs that would mean safety when the storms came. Then he placed the food neatly on the table, stacked the blankets by the hearth, and set the modest gifts beneath a makeshift tree the girl had begun decorating with popcorn and string. He strung the simple lights along the window, their soft glow warming the room like a promise finally kept. Before leaving, he paused, looking around at the simple space transformed not by wealth but by care, and for the first time in years he felt something close to peace. As he stepped back into the cold night and removed the red cloth, the cowboy understood that Santa had never been lost at all. He had only been waiting for someone willing to answer the call. Morning arrived with a hush so deep it felt reverent, broken only by the little girl's sharp intake of breath when she padded into the main room and saw what the night had left behind. Her eyes widened at the lights glowing softly against the frost-touched window and the gifts resting where empty space had been before. And for a long moment she simply stood there, as if afraid the magic might vanish if she moved too quickly. She didn't shout or wake her parents right away. Instead, she noticed the small details, the way the blankets were folded with care, the faint scent of leather and cold air, the boot prints half hidden near the door. When she stepped outside, she saw the cowboy at the fence, hat low, pretending to check a loose rail that no longer needed fixing. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. She walked over slowly and, with a smile far wiser than her years, whispered that Santa must have needed help finding the ranch after all. The cowboy knelt so they were face to face, and she thanked him not with excitement, but with a quiet sincerity that struck deeper than praise ever could. She promised she wouldn't tell, as if secrets were part of keeping miracles alive. The cowboy felt his throat tighten, realizing she understood something most adults had forgotten, that belief survives best when it is shared. As the parents emerged, confusion turning into stunned gratitude, the girl simply slipped her small hand into the cowboy's, holding it for a brief moment before running back to show them what Santa had brought. Left standing alone again, the cowboy watched her go, knowing that, whatever road he took next, he would never be the same man who had ridden in. The day unfolded gently, as if the world itself had decided to slow down and make room for something rare. The family insisted the cowboy stay, and though he tried to refuse, the warmth in their invitation left him no honest way to ride off. A simple Christmas meal was prepared from what little they had and what had appeared like a blessing overnight. And they gathered around the rough table, where laughter soon replaced the quiet tension that had once lived there. The father, still healing, spoke with the cowboy about horses and land, grateful not just for the help, but for being treated as capable rather than broken. The mother's eyes shone as she watched her daughter move between them, joy lighting her face in a way she hadn't seen for far too long. The girl showed the cowboy her favorite gift, declaring it proof that Santa knew exactly where they lived now. And everyone smiled, choosing belief over explanation. As the fire crackled and the coal stayed outside where it belonged, the cowboy realized this was the first Christmas in years where he wasn't measuring time by miles or exits. He found himself telling stories, listening more than speaking, feeling the strange comfort of belonging without having to earn it. When evening came, no one asked him to leave, and no one needed to. The silence between them had shifted, no longer empty but full. In that shared warmth, the cowboy understood that sometimes home isn't a place you ride toward, it's a moment you decide not to ride away from. When the time came to leave, it did not arrive with urgency but with a quiet hesitation that surprised them all. The cowboy stood outside the house as the pale winter sun crept over the fields, his horse already saddled, the road waiting as it always had. The girl walked up to him, her breath puffing in small clouds, and asked if Santa would be able to find the ranch again next year. The cowboy smiled, resting a hand on the fence he had mended, and told her that Santa knew the way now and that some places, once found, were never truly lost again. Her grin spread wide, satisfied, as if the answer had been certain all along. The parents thanked him with words that carried more than gratitude, offering him a place to return whenever the road grew heavy. He mounted his horse but did not ride far, pausing at the rise beyond the ranch to look back one last time. The house stood warmer now, not because of what had been left behind, but because of what had begun. As he turned away, the cowboy realized the road no longer felt endless, and for the first time in his wandering life, he knew exactly where it led back, to a place that had quietly, unmistakably become home.